there's that line in the trailer where the man says, "अच्छा मुसीबत आन पड़ी तो लेडी अफसर को भेज दिया."
जंगल कितना भी घना क्यों ना हो, शेरनी अपना रास्ता ढूंढ ही लेती है.
I'm in conversation with one of my most favorite actor, Vidya Balan. She doesn't believe it, but it's very true. And every Vidya Balan film for me is like an outing, is like an event movie. And like I always say, for me, her acting is like waves lapping a seashore. I don't know how she does it so seamlessly every single time. And just when you feel you've seen it all, okay, this is it, she springs another minty fresh surprise at you. So absolutely love you, Vidya, and it's a huge honor as always to chat with you. So I'm
my
sure
head is swollen. Thank you so much. So much love, so much praise. Thank you, Jitesh.
But I love you.
Love you too.
So I'm sure you're doing all these round robin interviews. I'm 100% sure you're going to be asked so many of the same questions. So let me be the first one to ask you one of those questions. When you did Sherni, I mean, you shot so much in the jungles and you were like one with nature. Was it like a life-changing experience? I mean, that's the closest you can get to organic stuff.
Actually, because I love nature, but the extent of my relationship with nature was, I like having trees around me. Like I love green spaces. I live on the beach, so that's lovely. And when you go on holidays to pretty places, it's all great. But I'm a city girl, so I've been on safaris, but I've never been comfortable living in the jungle or even living in a log cabin or a tent because I always feel like, don't trust those creepy crawlies. It would always make me uncomfortable. But, so I think I had this, I was slightly intimidated by it. But Sherni happened to me at a time when I was ready to I think, embrace the wild. When Amit shared the idea with me, I was like, wow, this is so unusual. It's a world I'm not really familiar with. And I'm getting to play a forest officer who's posted in the jungle. So let's, of course I love the story and all that, but this was a huge draw for me. And the shooting experience itself, Jitesh, I lived in a tent in the first schedule. In the second schedule, we couldn't do that because of the pandemic. But it was so liberating. I was actually not scared. Otherwise, if you saw me, amidst even a patch of trees, I'd be constantly checking to see if there's a snake somewhere or, if there's but this time around, I didn't feel like that. And I actually, through the research I did, I watched a lot of documentaries. I read a book called The Hidden Life of Trees, which really was such an eye-opener for me. I went on some forest trails and I realized that, oh my God, this is, you're in your most natural state when you're out in the wild here.
Tell me about your fascination with the tigers, and it's basically like a complete breakdown of communication. You're cut off from the world and all of that, and there is this very primal energy that you're sharing. Tell me about that. When we watch documentaries, whether it's David Attenborough or a lot of these wildlife, there seems to be something freeing is the word for that. So did you feel that anyway?
I think there's no need to be anyone but who you are when you're in the wild, when you're one with nature. I think that I found really fascinating. That was life-changing. And it's so much more than you, right? It's so much when you think of your problems and suddenly you look down a valley and you feel like who am I? I'm so minuscule. And if I am so minuscule, then my problem is not even a dot. So it gives you perspective. You look at the sky. I think I've begun to appreciate even the stars. I would not look up at the skies really before this. Because anyway, we hardly see stars in Bombay. But I'm saying, all that has changed. I think also after the first schedule, when the lockdown happened, I was at home and I tended to my plants. And it's not a lot. But, I think therefore that this film happened to me at the right time. It was it was waiting to happen. I can't describe in words that feeling. I feel so protective about my plants. Previously, when people would say, oh, I'm traveling and I need someone to water my plants, I'd be like, they would get really hassled about it. My mom, for example, and I'd be like, what's the big deal if you don't water it for a few days? I'm sorry. I might be sounding heartless when I say this, but I had that attitude. But today I feel very differently. And today I see how, everything we do impacts the environment. I used to feel like, oh my God, people who go on about the environment and all that, I used to not get them really. I would feel like, it's a bit too much, yeah. Kya hai itna? I'm being very honest. But I now understand that it's this nature that's keeping us alive. And we're abusing that very nature. And therefore, we need to take stock. We need to pull up our socks. We need to do things differently. And, but the beauty about Sherni is it's not preaching any of these things.
Okay.
But I hope you'll feel it.
You said you spoke about the environment. 3 things you learned about the environment vis-a-vis Sherni.
What do you mean vis-a-vis Sherni?
See, you were out in the jungle. It was like I said, the most primal relationship that you would, so, I mean, when it comes back to basics, we are so used in showbiz to vanity and this entire entourage culture and all of that. And suddenly you're cut away from, I mean, of course, there is staff and all of that. But a lot of people who stay in jungles and go on treks and expeditions keep saying it's like Vipassana. It's life-changing,
Yeah.
So did you feel that, before I come to more specific questions on the film?
I definitely felt that. Also Vidya Vincent is a quiet person. She's very reserved. She's very withdrawn. So, on screen, I wasn't speaking much. I had to be, it was more internal. Right. She's the kind of person who doesn't smile too much. So I think that was also affecting how I was on the outside, as in between shots. But more importantly, it was being in that environment was affecting me. I felt the need to be quieter. I felt the need not to interact. I didn't feel like, I needed to do anything that I didn't feel like doing, even have a conversation. I know that on this film, I was far quieter than I've been on any other film. So that definitely, what did I learn about the jungle? I learned about the jungle that when you, if you went into the jungle 100 times and you see the tiger once, be sure that the tiger has seen you 99 times. Isn't that a fascinating thing?
Amazing.
And the locals were telling me things like this. And of course, we've used a lot of their native knowledge in the film. It was so nice to be interacting. So Amit would be like, oh, this is what they've said. So let's try and incorporate this into a scene. Of course, we'd done a lot of research even before. And we had an expert, a wildlife expert with us who was, just so that we get the details correct and all that. And he would tell me fascinating things about, I didn't even really know what the difference between moths and butterflies was. And then he taught me how to tell the difference. And, so I think either that I was really ignorant before this, or that, you know, this film has, I don't know, maybe most other people know more than I do anyway. But for me, this film it opened my eyes to a whole lot of things. Like, you know, I realized that fungi are so integral to maintaining the ecosystem of the jungle. You know, and I've never thought of fungi as being fungus as you know, I never think that it was such a big contributor to these kind of things.
Now to my most basic question, most movies, I mean, women don't have agency, but in your films, you always have agency, you know, whether it is the dirty picture or whether it is Kahaani or whether it's Pa, or there's always agency. So with Sherni, I mean, there is definitely the job profile and all of that. But what made you choose a film like Sherni, which on paper may have sounded, you know, I don't know, a less evolved actor may have said, okay, theek hai, so what? What makes you pick a film like Sherni?
I think, like I told you first, it was the world that fascinated me. And the fact that, you know, you would expect that someone who's working in the forest department would have to be, you know, physically very strong. And because it can be physically arduous, it can be dangerous. So you don't associate women with that job. And then I realized that there were lots of women in the forest department, you know, lots of female forest officers. And the way they negotiate, because traditionally it has been a male bastion, it's interesting how they're having to challenge that patriarchal mindset even today. Because, you know, like we've used, there's that line in the trailer where the man says, "Acha, musibat aan padi to lady afsar ko bhej diya." Because you feel that, you know, you weaken someone when you send a woman to fight or to confront. So I think for me, it's probably my understanding also of the fact that, you know, not, for example, most of the characters I've played, or all the characters I've played, have been strong women, but they've been more obviously strong, right? Whereas Vidya Vincent is not at all, you won't think of her as a strong woman when you meet her. She'd rather be invisible to you. She's one of those people who doesn't want to interact with the world. She doesn't want to engage with the world, which is why she's in the forest, and she loves the forest, and she wants to do a good job, protect the wildlife and all of that, you know, do the right thing. But I think I have the maturity today to realize that, you know, there is not one kind of show of strength. You can be a Vidya Vincent, but it doesn't mean you're not strong. To remain quiet, to remain within yourself also takes a lot of strength. But she uses her voice when she needs to. She stands up for what she believes in. So I think this thing about the character and the world, you know, previously I would have thought that, oh God, you know, who wants to see a film set in a jungle? But when I heard this, maybe something's changed in me, and I felt that, no, this is something I want to watch. And I always go by what I want to watch, you know, because I don't have any other parameter to judge. So I'm always like, oh, I want to watch this film. So I ended up doing it. So I think it's with a filmmaker like Amit Masurkar also, he's a slightly, what should I say? It's more subtle. It's not so obvious, you know. Even his choice of the character to tell this story is not your typical or stereotypical officer that you'd imagine in the forest.
His narrative, say for Newton and say Sherni, is a lot, somebody going into the jungles and upsetting the status quo. Did you think of that? I mean, there is Rajkumar in Newton who comes and, who's an unassuming person and completely sort of shatters the existing norms about boot capturing and all of that. And here there's you who's going into the wild, as it were. So have you been in a situation like that where you've been absolutely thrown to the wild and you had to fend for yourself or stuff like that?
No, not really.
You've always been protected.
I've always been, absolutely sheltered in that sense. Yeah, I've never been in that situation. But in films, of course.
Give me 3 Sherni moments of yours when you had to sort of fight like a tigress, where you remember.
One, of course, is when I was auditioning for Parinita. That was, I think I think that killer instinct, was very, very, very strong at that point. I really felt like a tigress. It was a do or die for me. Because I knew that it was Vinod Chopra films, for God's sake. If I got this as my break, then at least I was sure that this film would get made. Forget about the future, because the films I'd done before this had not seen the light of day, hadn't even gotten completed. So I felt like, ye ho jaye to phir main kuch nahi mangungi. And there was a Pradeep Sarkar who had immense faith in me. So I remember going into every audition like a tigress, also because that would be preceded by a rejection. Him saying, no, I'm not convinced she's Lolita. That was one time. The other time when I think, there's a line in the teaser of Sherni. It's actually a voiceover of mine which says, Jungle kitna bhi ghana kyun na ho, Sherni apna rasta dhoond hi leti hai. I think around 2007-8, when I was going through a period of confusion about the kind of work I wanted to do, I was also facing a lot of criticism for anything and everything and all that. I think that was the time where, again, there was a Sherni moment. I felt like I navigated my way through the thicket, and found the light. And the third time, I think, is yet to happen.
Tell me a little about your process while doing Sherni. I mean, what did you think about this woman when you read the, script? What did you think? How would you play it? Like you said, there's a lot of silence and you're very good with silences. I mean, your reaction shots are just so amazing. But how do you, what was there any sort of homework that you personally did while doing Sherni?
Yeah, it was actually tough for me to wrap my head around Vidya Vincent because she's so non-reactive. So she's not just quiet, she's non-reactive most of the time. So, and I'm a very reactive person. I'm very responsive. So I was like, there were times when I'd feel like, no, maybe she should do a little more. Maybe she should say something. And Amit would be like, no. And Amit is the kind of director who, literally didn't want any of us to be acting while acting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He wants everything so realistic. And sometimes it's a comfort zone. Sometimes it's convenient for you to use a shortcut. Sometimes a trope that you've learned along the way, or something you've done in the past and it's worked unconsciously. Sometimes we slip into a performance. But he was always, he would always call that out and say, no, let's do another one. And, just let's keep it real. Even a little. The only thing I struggled with was sometimes I'd smile in a take and he'd come and say, no, I don't want her to smile. And I'd be like, no, but why can't she smile? Because I smile so naturally that like I'm saying, that was a bit tough for me not to smile in some instances but he said, no, there are people who are like that. And I know there are people who are like that, but just that, So Vidya Vincent was, I think, a bit tough for me.
So you say you had to tone down your sur a bit from what you are in real life.
Yeah, for sure. No, not a bit, a lot, because I'm like, so in that sense, I had to tone it down a lot. No, but I think even from how I imagined her, I had to tone it down on set. So that was tough sometimes, because I would feel like, oh, I'm not reacting at all. And he'd be like, no, but this is what I want, So that was interesting. It's nice when after so many years, something gets thrown at you and it still takes you by surprise or even shock.
I don't know if you can talk about it yet, but what was the most challenging moment in the film for you?
Jitesh, just the fact that I have to be so non-reactive. I found that very tough. Because I guess, I had imagined that while she's a very reticent person, she's very reserved and she's very withdrawn, but that she would react. But most of the time, he didn't want me to react. And I'd be like, then how will it show? Because it has to show in my eyes, it has to show in my... But he wanted me... But of course, there are people like that. So I think I played a very different sort of person in Sherni, and I hope I've done her justice.
You've always combated the patriarchy in your films, in one way or the other. What sort of patriarchal mindset had you to combat your character, Vidya Vincent, in Sherni? When I see the promos, it looks like this whole mindset that you have to deal with. That must have been tough, no? I mean, imagine people actually live their lives with that kind of mindset.
She's not the kind of person who will just turn around and slap someone and say, how dare you? Because of the kind of person she is, she deals with it also with a certain amount of equanimity. Of course, she gets angry and irritated and all, but that's also very, very slight. But I think she has great courage of conviction. And she's, despite being so internal, I think she stands up for what she believes in. She's unafraid to do that. So when there is a need, she will stand up to do the right thing. But I think she's very conscientious. So, that gives her the courage. She knows she's doing the right thing and therefore she has nothing to fear. It's like that moment in Jaagte Raho, which is one of my favoriteest cinematic moments, when the child asks him, she says, "Tum bhaag kyun rahe ho?" He says, "Sab mere piche pade hain," or something like that. So she says, "Kyun tum chor ho?" He says, "Nahi." She says, "Phir kyun dar rahe ho?" And that suddenly gives him the courage to go out and walk with his head held high. And the same people who are chasing him pass him, but don't notice him. So Vidya Vincent is one of those people.
So thank you. I hope you continue to remain the tigress that you're on screen and keep roaring and wowing us with your magic always. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful chatting with you. Thank you so much.
काफी तारीफ सुन रहा हूँ तुम्हारे काम की।
मैं सब हैंडल कर लूंगा।
क्या प्लान है आपका?
ये प्लान कुछ नहीं है, गॉड्स गिफ्ट है। सब कुछ इधर है।
फिर लोग अपने जानवरों को चराने कहाँ ले जाएंगे सर?
जहाँ चाहे वहाँ ले जाए, कोई हमारा ठेका थोड़ी है। हमको बेसिक चिंता करनी चाहिए टाइगर की।
बंदर बाट का खेला खेले में है जमे।
इतनी सुंडी मुंडी बनकर जाओगी। हाथ में देखो कुछ नहीं पहन रखा है। बहन ने 9 तोले का तुम्हें दिया था ना हरवा, वो पहन करके चलो।
सर आप निश्चिंत रहिए, यहाँ का चार्ज अब मैंने ले लिया, मैं संभाल लूंगा सर।
अगर आपके डिपार्टमेंट से नहीं हो रहा है तो हम ही कुछ कर लेंगे।